Hello everybody, thanks for checking us out here on the Fwoosh. Today we're going to be taking a look at Hasbro's Transformers Age of Extinction Drift figure. Now, I really dragged my feet in when it came to picking up this figure because I wasn't sure I really wanted him on my shelf, just because he's such a big departure from what I'm used to identifying as Drift. Here is the Takara Generations Drift side by side with the new movie Drift, and we can see there is quite a difference between the two characters. Now, that's nothing new when it comes to movie characters. Oftentimes when figures or when characters get translated from the classic medium to the movie, a lot of creative licenses are taken. And I've got no problem with that. I'm all for new interpretations and new ideas being brought to Transformers, so no issue there. At first, I just wasn't crazy about Drift's particular interpretation in the movie. Now, with the IDW version, there was always kind of a subtle Asian influence to the character. I mean, his name is Drift, first of all, and I always associate that with Tokyo Drift, and he has kind of a Gundam look to him. So there's always been that kind of subtle Asian quality to the character. Now, with the movies, there is no room for subtlety. As anybody knows who's seen any of Michael Bay's Transformers movies, subtlety is thrown out the window and everything gets cranked up to 10 or 11. So that's what's happening here. All the subtle Asian influence from the IDW Drift ends up being translated into a character who looks like a blue samurai warrior, who has an Asian accent, although he is voiced by an Asian actor, who speaks in haiku, and who carries around swords. And that's not a big deal. But in the movie, we're just kind of presented with this character who's doing these things, and we're given no explanation as to why, so we're forced to connect the dots ourselves. So for me, when I first saw him, what he reminded me of was maybe the kid in high school who was obsessed with Japanese pop culture and then just started assimilating the culture in the most, I guess, cursory way, the way he understood it. And that's basically what I saw when I saw Drift on the screen. That's what it meant to me. It seemed harmless to me. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I guess there are some people who are taking issue with how Asian culture is being used as a stereotype in terms of his characterization. And I can see that. I'm not saying people shouldn't feel that way, because I can definitely see it. But at the same time, I think the way it struck me helps me deal with that. In the previous movies, there was Skids and Mudflap, and Michael Bay had all kinds of accusations of racism lobbed at him because of those two. So we're seeing it again with Drift here, maybe not to quite the same degree, but it's definitely there. But anyway, let's put the politics to the side and just look at the figure. Now, it is a nicely detailed, nicely sculpted figure, like all the current movie figures. I think the Age of Extinction figures are very well done in terms of sculpt. Let's see if we can get a close-up on his face here. His face sculpt, I think, is kind of a knockout. Now, I don't know if it's his actual face or if it's a mask or what it is, but the detail there is fantastic for a small deluxe figure. He just looks really good to me. And in terms of articulation, he's got a full range of motion in his shoulders, which is good for, some sword fighting action. They can move out to the side too. He's got ratcheted elbows. For his wrists, there's no swivel, but there is this in and out kind of motion, which is kind of okay, I guess. His head is on a ball, and then he can look all over the place, which is good. His legs, he's got a decent range of motion in his hips, but his knees are a little weak. That's all the bend you can get out of him, and his ankles leave a lot to be desired. So he's not the most articulated Transformers figure ever, and for someone who's based on a samurai, he might be able to use a little bit better range of motion. It might serve him a little bit better. Now, in terms of his transformation, let's get to that. All we want to do is remove his swords, first of all. Okay, and straighten his arms out. Then in the back, he's got these panels here that flip up. Okay. And then these panels move forward like that. And then we flip his feet like this and bring those two halves together And that gives us the back end of his car mode, basically. Next, this panel detaches from just behind his head, and that frees up this whole apparatus. And then we have to flip what is going to become the front end of his car around, and that is always a bit of a trial for me. I know there's probably a sweet spot to do this. I feel like I'm going to break it right now. So give me a second here while I fiddle and figure this out. There we go. That was probably not the way to do it because that felt horrible, but it's free. Okay. And then we can flip his head back and move that up, and then everything kind of comes together and locks in place like that, or at least it should. Now, this is the part that gives me some trouble. His arms are supposed to move up on this joint here on this hinge, and these panels are supposed to just kind of all fit together. But of course, they never want to. That one worked a little bit. And that one did too. Ha, got it. And then the doors flip in. That was actually the easiest time I've ever had transforming Drift to his vehicle mode. Oops, his hand is not in where it should go. And now the whole thing's falling apart. See, I spoke way too soon there. Man, I really did speak too soon. There we go. Okay, so there is his vehicle mode. And it is a sharp vehicle mode. It looks pretty good. And I like that he has a little black Autobot sigil there. On his, actually, that looks kind of bad. That doesn't look right. There, now that looks better. Okay, it is pretty sharp. And it doesn't look like a jigsaw puzzle, which is always a nice plus for Transformers Alt mode. So there we go. Not bad, not bad. Now, to get him back to his robot mode, again, it's not that difficult a process. Flip open the doors, and that frees up the arms. And then that panel we can flip up. Oops, legs are falling out of position here. And then we separate the legs, flip his feet down, like that. Like that. God, dealing with this back panel is kind of a pain sometimes. We flip his head up, and then we just have to deal with this. That should flip up easier than it ever does for me. I know I'm doing something wrong there. That flips up. This little panel here flips up, and it goes into that little peg right behind his head. And there we have his bot mode once again. You can hear the fireworks. This is 4th of July. I'm doing this while our neighbors are lighting off some fireworks. And then the swords go in his hands. And once again, we have Drift back in his robot. And it is not bad. It looks pretty good. I've gotten used to it. I'm no longer constantly comparing it to this version of Drift, and that is okay with me. If I can just take him out of the frame, I'm able to just evaluate and appreciate this Drift on his own accord, on his own merit. And if we put him side by side here with one of the Voyagers from the Wave, this is my repainted Galvatron, we see that he is a bit on the small side for a Deluxe. Not terrible, but definitely a bit on the small side. Okay, so that is Hasbro's Age of Extinction Drift figure from the Transformers movie line. Thanks for checking us out here on the Fwoosh, and I will see you next time.